All right, today we're going to talk about our solving quadratics using the square root property. So let's get started with the steps. So we're going to take this and we're going to first isolate the variable or expression being squared. So in this case, we're going to move this 4 over here by subtracting 4, and then you're going to end up with 12. So now if you notice, this part being squared is all on this side. Now we got to move this 2 over by dividing the 2. So only this part is the part being squared. So now once we have this, then the inverse of a square is to take a square root. And once you do to one side, you have to do it to the other. And then don't forget that you need to include the plus or minus sign before the radical. So now that we've taken the square root, we're left with 2x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 6. Now once you have this part, we're going to separate the positive negative roots and then solve. So you will have 2 solutions. So don't actually try to find the decimal square root unless you're told so. You can leave it in a radical form. That's more accurate anyways. So we're going to take this plus root 6 and put it here. And then we're going to take the minus square root of 6 and put that over here. And in this case, the square root is outside the radical, so we're okay. And then once you have this, you're just going to add 1 to both sides, and you'll get 2x equals 1 plus square root of 2. And then divide everything by 2. So you'll get 1 plus square root of 6 over 2. And then when you come over here, we're going to add 1 to both sides. And then divide each thing by 2. And so, or you'll get 1 minus square root of 6 over 2. So your final answer is this or that. All right, so now we're going to go through. This one's super easy. It's just taking the square root of both sides. This is just the practice. So remember, that's already by itself. Take the square root of both sides. So you're going to get x equals plus or minus 5. And that's all you need to do. There's nothing too fancy or in depth with that one. Okay, so now let's look here. First, what we have to do is we want to get this by itself. So you have to divide both sides by 3. Now that you've got that, that cancels out and you're left with x squared equals 27. Now take the square root of both sides. And once you get that, you're going to get x equals plus or minus 3 root 3. Because remember, this is 9 times 3. And that's where we got this from. But don't forget to bring this down. And then those are your 2 solutions. All right, I want you to try this one. You are going to have a fraction with that one. All right, let's look at number 4. Now this is 2-step, multi-step equation. So we're going to subtract 3 to get, we want to get that part by itself. So once we get subtract 3, I'm going to have m squared equals negative 5. And remember this, m squared is over 15. So since you're dividing by 15, you have to multiply both sides by 15. That cancels out with m squared. And then this gives you negative 75. Now, we need to take the square root of both sides. But again, remember we have that negative, so that's a negative 1, which is your I. And then 75 is 25 times 3. So I know the square root of 25 is 5, and then what's left over is square root of 3. And then again, don't forget your plus or minus. All right, now for this one, when you look originally, everything on this side is being squared, so we don't have to do anything except for this. So, and then once we take the square root, we're going to have 2y plus 3 over here with plus or minus 7 over here. And then now, just be careful when you're doing this, you're going to subtract 3. So we're going to make the plus 7 one solution. We're breaking this up. And then you're going to solve for the plus 7 by subtracting 3. And you'll get 2y equals 4. And then you're going to get y equals 2. So this is one solution, But now we're going to take this minus part and we're going to set it equal to -7. So we're going to subtract 3 just like we did before, but this time, since it's -7, it's going to give you -10. So divide both sides by 2 and get y equals -5. So your two answers would be y equals 2 and y equals -5. So go ahead, try that one. Number 7, I want you to try that one, and remember you're going to want to add 10 first, and then you'll divide by 4, and then you'll take the square root of it. All right, so let's look at number 8. 8's a little different because it's a little complicated. You got a complex number in there. So first what we're going to do is subtract 6, and then you're going to get 3 times 4x minus 2 squared equals -42. Well, remember, we want to get this isolated, so we need to get rid of the 3, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. That cancels out, so you're left with 4x minus 2 squared equals -14. Take the square root of both sides, and then now you're going to get 4x minus 2, and I've got a negative here, which we're going to factor out, and then don't forget to put your plus or minus, and 14. And now that we've got this, we have to add 2 to both sides. So we're going to get 4x equals 2 plus or minus I root 14. And then we have to divide both sides by 4 still, and that cancels out. So you've got a couple options for how you could write this. You could write it as x equals 2 plus or minus I root 14 over 4. Or if you split it up this way, and remember there's a 1 there, you can get 1/2 plus or minus I root 14 over 4. So either of those options would be fine. All right, and I want you to go ahead and I want you to try that one, and that is solving the quadratics using the square root property.